French protests erupt. Teachers, students, and Gilets Jaunes unite in massive uprising. On September 10, 2025, France was engulfed by a wave of protests under the banner of the Block Everything movement. What began as a grassroots initiative on social media quickly transformed into a nationwide uprising, uniting teachers, students, healthcare workers, and the iconic Gilets Jaunes, yellow vests, in a collective stand against government austerity measures. The catalyst for this unrest was the appointment of Sébastien Lecornu as Prime Minister following the ousting of François Bayrou. This political shift ignited widespread discontent, leading to one of the most significant demonstrations in recent French history. The immediate trigger for the protests was the government's announcement of €44 billion in budget cuts, disproportionately affecting public services, education, and healthcare. Coupled with a national debt exceeding 114% of GDP, these austerity measures were seen as exacerbating social inequalities and eroding public trust in the political elite. The appointment of Lecornu, perceived by many as a technocrat with close ties to business interests, further fueled the perception of a government out of touch with the needs of its citizens. Educators across the nation took to the streets, voicing their opposition to overcrowded classrooms, insufficient resources, and the erosion of educational standards. Unions such as SUD Education and CGT-EDUC Action organized strikes and demonstrations, highlighting the strain on the education system and the government's failure to address their concerns. In Paris, teachers barricaded schools, demanding immediate reforms and a halt to the planned budget cuts. Students, particularly from universities like Sciences Po, joined the protests in large numbers. Their grievances ranged from the government's handling of the Gaza conflict to the rising cost of living and limited job prospects. Many students felt marginalized and ignored by policymakers, leading to sit-ins, hunger strikes, and coordinated walkouts across campuses. At Sciences Po, a group of students initiated a hunger strike to protest the deaths in Gaza, symbolizing their commitment to social justice and human rights. The Gilets Jaunes movement, which had been dormant in recent years, saw a resurgence as protesters donned their iconic yellow vests once more. Their presence was a powerful reminder of the 2018 to 2019 protests that shook France, and their return signaled a renewed commitment to challenging economic inequality and government policies perceived as elitist. In cities like Paris, Lyon, and Marseille, Gilets Jaunes led roadblocks, marches, and direct actions, calling for systemic change and greater accountability from elected officials. Despite their diverse backgrounds and specific concerns, the protesters found common ground in their opposition to austerity and the government's perceived indifference to their struggles. The Block Everything movement became a unifying force, transcending traditional political affiliations and ideologies. From the barricades in Paris to the demonstrations in Marseille, the message was clear. The people were demanding change. As the day progressed, tensions escalated. Protesters clashed with riot police, resulting in over 350 arrests nationwide. In Paris, nearly 200 individuals were detained as demonstrators attempted to breach key infrastructure points like the Gare du Nord train station. The use of tear gas and rubber bullets by law enforcement further intensified the confrontations, drawing comparisons to the violent clashes of the Yellow Vest protests. Throughout the day, protesters engaged in symbolic acts to express their discontent. In Paris, a popular restaurant was set ablaze amid the chaos, while elsewhere, protesters left pigs' heads outside mosques, a provocative gesture that sparked outrage and underscored the deep-seated frustrations within certain segments of society. These acts, while controversial, highlighted the intensity of the anger felt by many and the lengths to which they were willing to go to make their voices heard. The protests have had significant political ramifications. The appointment of Lecornu, seen by many as a technocratic figure lacking empathy for the public, has come under scrutiny. Critics argue that his leadership style mirrors that of his predecessor, Bayrou, whose tenure was marked by unpopular budget cuts and a disconnect from the electorate. The widespread unrest has led to calls for a re-evaluation of the government's policies and a more inclusive approach to governance. While the immediate focus was on the government's austerity measures, the protests have highlighted deeper issues within French society. Demonstrators have called for a reevaluation of economic priorities, a fairer distribution of wealth, and a political system that genuinely represents the interests of the people. The Block Everything movement has become a rallying cry for those disillusioned with the status quo and seeking meaningful change. The events in France have resonated beyond its borders. International observers and solidarity groups have expressed support for the protesters, drawing parallels to similar movements in other parts of the world. The global response underscores the interconnectedness of struggles for social justice and the universal desire for a more equitable and responsive political system. As France grapples with the aftermath of the September 10th protests, the future remains uncertain. The government's response to the unrest will be critical in determining the trajectory of the nation's political landscape. However, one thing is clear: the people have spoken, and their demand for change cannot be ignored. Whether this movement will lead to lasting reforms or fade into history remains to be seen, but the events of September 10th have undeniably marked a pivotal moment in France's ongoing struggle for social justice and political accountability.